Good evening, folks. We'll just give folks another few minutes to join, and then we'll get started. Thank you.
Good evening. We would like to thank all of the Attendance Area Review Committee volunteers for joining us online today in order to represent your school communities. Given the forecast this evening, logging in virtually is the better of the two options. My name is Tracy Langland, and I'm the Superintendent of Student Achievement for Delaware Central and Parkview Public Schools. Joining me are Superintendents Lynn Griffith-Jones and Paul Sador. We are here this evening to present the proposed options for the Middlesex Elementary Attendance Area Review. This is a boundary review that is necessary to manage the growing enrollment in this area of Middlesex Central. This review is also important for our long-term planning for the growth of the community. Superintendent Jeff Vogt, Ben Puzanoff, and Cassandra Harms from our Facility Services and Capital Planning teams are also with us this evening. This meeting is the first step in the public consultation process for this review, and it is intended to provide school communities with information regarding what is being considered and how to provide the board with feedback. The agenda for this evening is up on the screen. We'll first provide background regarding attendance area reviews and detail the process, procedure, document, and timelines. This will be followed by a summary of the roles and responsibilities of Attendance Area Review Committee members and a presentation of the initial Attendance Area Review report. We will then have an opportunity for committee members to ask questions. An overview of the next steps will conclude this evening's session. I will now pass the presentation over to Ben to provide an overview of the Attendance Area Review process. Before we proceed, I see Ms. Sachs has a question.
I just want to say that I'm here online. This is Trustee Sachs, and I'm listening to the community.
Thank you, Trustee Sachs.
Thank you, Superintendent Langland. Before outlining the proposed boundary change under consideration, we're going to start by providing an overview of this attendance area review process, as well as the roles of attendance area review committee members. An attendance area review is a process by which Thames Valley changes boundaries to optimize enrollment and balance attendance across specific geographic areas. This is a process that is generally needed because of growing or declining enrollment and is done in order to ensure that optimal learning environments continue to be offered to our students. Thames Valley has a procedure for attendance area reviews, and this is available through our attendance area review website. This website does have many other resources, including a Q&A page, as well as interactive maps to show the potential boundary changes for each school. We'd encourage everyone to please visit tvdsb.ca/meaar to review these resources. Prior to considering an attendance area review, the Board of Trustees receives an initial attendance area review report from administration that details current and potential attendance areas, current enrollment and accommodations, enrollment projections for the area, current as well as proposed residential development, and community trends, and also a potential timeline for implementation. If trustees initiate the attendance area review, formal public consultation is then undertaken through the formation of an attendance area review committee, as well as school-level subcommittees, whose feedback and input is considered through trustees' decision-making process. The initial attendance area review report for this particular review was presented to trustees in October at the Planning and Priorities Advisory Committee meeting. At this meeting, administration was formally asked to proceed with gathering public input. Volunteers to sit on this attendance area review committee have then been recruited with the help of the principals of the schools involved in the review. And we'd like to thank everybody again for volunteering to help lead this important process on behalf of your schools. Following this evening's attendance area review committee meeting, attendance area review committee members for each school will be asked to host school-level meetings in order to obtain feedback regarding the boundary change under consideration. The attendance area review committee members of each school will need to designate a chair as well as a secretary for their school-level meetings in order to help manage the discussion and record feedback. Following the receipt of public feedback from the school communities, administration will then review the comments provided and prepare what's known as a final attendance area review report. Our goal always through these consultation processes is to improve upon the options under consideration. As part of the attendance area review process, members of the public are also then provided an opportunity to make delegations to the Board of Trustees regarding the final report and its recommendations. This is then followed by a decision by trustees at a subsequent meeting of the board. Once the decision's made, administration works with school communities as well as transition committees to implement boundary changes in accordance with the timeline as determined by trustees. So this particular slide provides an overview of the timeline for this attendance area review. Following this evening's meeting, it's expected that the school-level subcommittee meetings to obtain public feedback will be held between December through early February. In accordance with the procedure, there are a number of important dates specifically related to public consultation. January 18th is the deadline for subcommittees to request any additional information that their school communities may require in order to supplement the information contained in the initial attendance area review report that you'll hear about a little later this evening. This information would be intended to assist school communities with evaluating the options under consideration. Administration will be distributing any additional material that is requested to all school subcommittees involved in the review. As you can see on the screen, February 1st is the last date on which school-level subcommittee meetings may be held. And then finally, February 15th is the deadline for subcommittees to submit their written reports to administration on their school subcommittees' feedback. Administration will be reviewing the public feedback received and assembling the final attendance review report for trustees' consideration, with the goal again to improve upon the option you'll hear about later this evening. The presentation of the final report, as well as public delegations and the trustee decision, are expected to occur in May and June, with implementation of any proposed changes planned for September of 2025. As mentioned, the Attendance Area Review Committee is made up of volunteers from each school that's involved in the attendance area review, including parents and caregivers, chair of the school council, and chair of the Home and School Association. Attendance Area Review Committee members are vital to the success of the attendance area review process and are critical for obtaining feedback from school communities regarding the boundary change option under consideration. In addition to running the respective school-level subcommittee meetings, Attendance Area Review Committee members are responsible for producing that subcommittee report that documents the public feedback from each school community. So following this meeting, Thames Valley Administration will be providing Attendance Area Review Committee members with template documents in order to assist subcommittees with running the meetings. This would include an agenda and minute-taking template, as well as a subcommittee report document that is to be filled out with the community's feedback. This presentation deck will also be provided to subcommittees for inclusion in each presentation. And then subcommittees are, of course, welcome to supplement the slide deck with any additional information that you deem appropriate to present to the school community. Once the subcommittee dates are established, we'd ask that these be provided to Stacy Webb from our communications team at least 2 weeks in advance so we can notify school communities of the subcommittee meeting dates. Thames Valley will act as a resource following the meetings if any questions arise or if additional information is required by the school communities in order to evaluate the potential change under consideration. At this point, I will pass the presentation to Cassandra in order to present the initial attendance area review report.
Thank you, Ben. We will now walk through the initial attendance area report in more detail and provide an overview of the option being considered. The main objectives of this attendance area review are as follows: to address capacity challenges at Delaware Central Public School, to use space at Parkview Public School more effectively and designate students living within Kamoka-Kilworth to a more proximal school, and finally, to better position Thames Valley to pursue Capital Priorities Program funding from the Ministry of Education in order to build a permanent addition at Parkview Public School. There are 2 schools involved in this attendance area review, the first being Parkview Public School, which has an on-the-ground capacity of 602 students. It is currently operating just over capacity, with an increase in enrollment expected as a result of the proposed changes. This school is a larger facility with the amenities and land to accommodate the increased enrollment. The second school involved in this review is Delaware Central Public School, which has an on-the-ground capacity of 259 students. It is currently operating at capacity with 2 portables on site. As a result of the proposed changes, enrollment at this school will decline, providing much-needed relief on site. Due to sanitary servicing constraints and site configuration, this school can only accommodate up to 3 portables, which is expected to be exceeded by September 2024. Separate from this review, effective January 2024, all new families in the Kamoka-Kilworth portion of Delaware Central's attendance area will be designated to Parkview. The map shown on the screen right now shows current utilization levels at the 2 schools in this review. Both schools currently have utilization rates between 90 and 110%. On the right-hand side, you can see the utilization at Parkview Public School and Delaware Central Public School over the next 10 years if no changes to boundaries are made. Delaware Central would grow to a level that cannot be accommodated by the site. 5 portables would be required at the school by 2025, exceeding the maximum allowable number by 2. Parkview will continue to grow as well due to new housing development in Kamoka-Kilworth, but due to its large site, this will be manageable. The map on the screen shows where we know there is ongoing or expected housing development. The darker red areas symbolize a higher number of expected units, which you can see is concentrated in the Kamoka-Kilworth portion of the current Delaware Central Public School attendance area. As part of this review, one change to the Parkview and Delaware Central is being explored. The Kamoka-Kilworth portion of the current Delaware Central attendance area would be designated to Parkview Public School. As you can see on the map shown here, it is a small portion of the attendance area located north of the Thames River and south of Glendon Drive. As you can see from this slide, Parkview is a more proximal school for families living in the area outlined in the last slide. If the proposed changes are implemented, utilization at Delaware Central would decrease to a more manageable level. Parkview would experience an increase in enrollment, which would be managed by portables until an addition to the school is funded by the Ministry of Education. Parkview's site is much larger and already has the servicing required to support a larger student population. To access additional information about this attendance area review, as well as interactive maps, please visit www.tvdsb.ca/MEAAR. Opening the interactive maps allows you to zoom in on the potential change or search your address to determine if you would be impacted. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Superintendent Langland for the Q&A portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Ben and Cassandra. So at this juncture in the meeting, we open the floor to you if you have any questions that you'd like to present to the team. And this can be done in 2 ways. You may ask questions through the video or the mic, or you can insert your question into the Q&A portion found on Teams. We'll give a little bit of a wait time. Okay, we have a taker.
Hi there.
Hi, Daria.
Hi, I'm a parent at Parkview. I am just wondering how are we going to address the increase in bathroom accessibility with this overflow of students, with there only being 2 bathrooms at Parkview currently? What's the plan moving forward?
Thank you for that question, Daria. I'm going to pass that over to Manager Puzanov.
Thank you very much for the question, Daria. So based on the size of the school and the multiple additions that have been put on, there are sufficient washrooms to accommodate the increased student population. We'll certainly be working with the school superintendent, Superintendent Langland, and be willing to support the school if any additional sort of improvements deemed to be warranted. I hope that's helpful.
We'll give a little bit of a wait time to see if there's any additional questions that are brought forward. Also, I would add at this time, understanding that you may need some time to process this information, we do have the website link that was provided to you at the beginning of this meeting should anything surface. Okay, I'm just going to read a question from the question and answer. It says, Parkview can already be expecting kids to come from the new area, January. Why doesn't this happen now? How are we dealing with bathroom capacity? Which I think we've answered, and in addition to classroom sizes. So I can answer most of this question. There needed to be a little bit of a lead time for families and for us to put our process through our trustees prior to inviting new students to attend Parkview in January. So that was the effective date that we had, which is really a natural turnover in the school term. So that's why we had selected that date. And as it relates to classroom sizes, there would be no changes to classroom sizes as these are set by the ministry through collective agreements with our teaching partners. I hope that answers that question for you, Ursula. Hi, Daria, I see you have another question. Go ahead.
Yep, I'm just kind of thinking as we go here. So what is Parkview's capacity for portables? As you know, you've stated that Delaware only has the capacity for 3, and I'm just wondering what Parkview's is. And it seems like we're somewhat being reactive, you know, in how we're dealing with this situation, because the site plan was always there. So why didn't we just bring everyone to Parkview initially versus now changing the boundary? How are you going to deal with parents that, you know, may have chosen to, I'm using a vague example, enroll their children in Our Lady of Lourdes because they weren't happy with the Delaware option, and now they're wanting to come to Parkview? Have we considered that?
Thank you for that question. I'll pass that over to Cassandra.
Thank you for your question. So to answer your question about portable capacity at Parkview Public School, the site can accommodate up to 10 portables based on site characteristics and washrooms available in the school. And this review is our strategy to hopefully secure funding for a permanent addition in the future. That would be our end goal coming out of this review.
Thank you, Cassandra. I'm going to go to the Q&A piece. We also have another question here. Will children who currently are enrolled at Delaware from the new area be allowed to finish at Delaware? And some of those suggestions and that feedback from the community are what we'd like to see in the subcommittee report. So we certainly welcome the feedback from the families from both Parkview and Delaware, and then we'll take that feedback back to the team. We also have another question here. My child is attending Delaware now and our home is in Kilworth, new development area. What is the plan for the students attending Delaware Central? I'll pass that over to Ben.
Thank you very much for the question. So students who are residing within the Kamoka-Kilworth portion and are attending Delaware from that attendance area, those students would then be designated to attend Parkview. So the expectation would be, if the change is made, in the year of implementation, all students will attend their newly designated school, so Parkview in this instance. With that being said, sometimes there are legacy agreements that are offered, as Superintendent Langland just mentioned, and we would encourage school subcommittees to include feedback regarding legacy agreements as part of the school subcommittee reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Megan, go ahead with your question.
Hi. So I have 3. I also I think we almost need to have the agenda up because I'm kind of struggling with where these might fit in, if this is an appropriate time to ask each of these, but just bear with me. A lot of this is very new to me too as a parent. I am a parent from Delaware Central. First of all, are there any studies that you're aware of on learning in portables and how that might impact the learning environment?
In short, not that I'm aware of, and we would have boards throughout the entire province and quite frankly throughout Canada that would readily access portables in school sites to accommodate different surges in student population.
Yeah, so it's interesting too. So we, before moving to Delaware, we actually lived in Hyde Park. So we were at Sir Arthur Currie, and we experienced how that school was only built for the development that was happening at the time. And then the huge surge, like that entire schoolyard is now portables. So I understand that you're talking about capacity for portables and you know, Parkview has more, Delaware has less. Even just the couple that are at Delaware has taken a large chunk of the school playground away from the kids. And it's like, I'm a parent, like I love seeing my kid out playing, you know, he was complaining that half the soccer field's gone. So it's, you know, I want to make sure that that's being taken into consideration too. So is there a certain square footage of playground that we need to make sure that we maintain? And is that part of the calculation in determining the portable capacity?
I'll pass that over to Ben.
Thank you very much for the question. So the 10 portable maximum limit that Cassandra alluded to earlier does include maintaining site amenities for students to enjoy the outdoor space. So that's certainly a consideration when we're looking at max portable counts.
Okay, may I ask what it is? Like, what is the appropriate amount of school play area for kids to have?
There isn't a fixed number. It just depends on each school site. And we certainly work with school principals as well as the superintendent to make sure that there's sufficient amenity space on each site, taking into account space for portables.
Okay. Lastly, so obviously Our Lady of Lourdes isn't on the table here, but to the previous parent's point, like some of us, like my child could go there. We would be able to do that, and it would be an option. And I'm just curious, like if we're maybe missing the mark here and not having that school community involved in this conversation. I don't know, like, and I don't know what the boundary for that looks like either, because it is a Catholic school. Like if that boundary is wider, if they can't necessarily turn anyone away, I don't fully understand that. I have to be honest, I've only been in the public school system. But it is something like if we were ever to be cut off and told to go to Parkview, I would very well go with Our Lady of Lourdes because we're right there. So again, just to help me try and think of questions that our parents might be asking, that's certainly one that I could think of might come up.
Thank you for that question. So Our Lady of Lourdes is part of the London District Catholic School Board, so we don't have an attendance area for that school because it is not a Thames Valley school. Certainly there's an overlap in boundaries there, and students would have the option to attend a Thames Valley school or a London District Catholic school, if that's kind of the decision there. In terms of just the boundary change, just to clarify, so this change would only affect that portion of the Delaware Central boundary within Kamoka-Kilworth, and that would designate students to their more proximal school being in Kamoka.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the last one, so where, in terms of community size, like at what point do we start considering a new school or dozing one and building a bigger school altogether? Like, I just don't fully understand what that process looks like. What you're mentioning that we need to do portables first before we can potentially receive funding. It's just, it feels really backwards, and I just need help kind of understanding what that process looks like.
Great question. So the way that funding for new capital works for school boards in Ontario is that the ministry funds new capital when there's a demonstrated need by way of students already being present, kind of showing that there is the enrollment there to fill either the addition or the school once it is built. So particularly for Kamoka-Kilworth, we recognize there's a lot of growth that is happening in that community. We are in continuous discussions with Middlesex Center's planning staff as well as administration, just making sure that we are factoring in all of that development and growth into our projections. At this point, our best thinking is an addition for Parkview in order to accommodate that growth, but certainly longer term, recognizing that there will be more growth coming, we will be looking to add a new school to the community.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to move on to some other questions in the chat. So we have a question pertaining to, and I'm making an assumption here that the question is in relation to all new families who are currently registering in school in January will be redirected to Parkview. I believe the question is, why was this decision made now when previously there was a hold on that in 2019? And I think we need to be clear in distinguishing the two as well. We have a current cap in enrollment at Delaware Central that will come into effect in January, but the attendance area review that we're discussing this evening would not come in effect until September 2025. But I'll pass this question over to you, Ben.
Thanks very much, Tracy. And what I would add there is the cap at Delaware Central would only impact that portion of the attendance area in Kamoka-Kilworth. So the all new families moving into that area that would now be designated to attend Parkview. And then the boundary change between the two schools would move existing students from Delaware Central to Parkview. To answer the question there regarding the outcome of 2019, so there was an attendance area review done at the time to essentially accommodate the growth from Kamoka-Kilworth at another school, because Parkview was over capacity then and there was some space available at Delaware. Certainly that growth has been significant, and now we are recognizing that longer term we can't accommodate all of that growth at Delaware Central, and we do need ultimately a new solution in the form of new capital, so in addition at Parkview, and the best way to achieve that is through designating students to their most proximal school and showing the ministry that we do have a demonstrated need in the community for new student spaces. So I hope that is helpful.
Thank you, Ben. And perhaps this is a great lead into the other question here in the chat, where there's an indication that Kilworth's developers plan had a site for a new school reserved. And there's a question whether or not TVDSB was taking that into consideration.
Thank you very much, Tracy. That's a great question. There is a school block that has been earmarked until December of 2024 in order to for TVDSB to potentially acquire that site in order to build a new school. The way that the funding works is that school boards, Thames Valley in particular, we do need approval to build the school first before we can buy the site. So we can't actually go out and buy the site until the ministry approves a business case. And given the number of students that we've got in the area currently, there isn't a strong case for a new school just yet. So we don't anticipate to be in a position to acquire that site. But I will say that we are working with our partners at the municipality of Middlesex Center to identify future school sites in order to essentially position ourselves favorably for accommodating the growth when it does happen, particularly when it warrants a new school. So that discussion is ongoing.
Thank you, Ben. At this point, I'm going to move to the raised hands. I'll start first with Daria, followed by Jeremy. Go ahead, Daria.
Sorry again with the multiple questions. So to clarify, it sounds like space utilized by portables and then access to appropriate amenities isn't based on a calculation, it's more subjective, correct?
Thank you for the question. So in terms of determining what portable amounts are sort of appropriate for each site, we do work closely with administrators as well as superintendents to determine what that number is, and that does factor into account making sure that there is adequate amenity space for students at the school.
Okay, so nothing will be done until there will be no application or availability to build this proposed addition to Parkview Public School until we're maxed out at those 10 portables, until we physically have all those bums per se in chairs in the buildings and in the portables. So it sounds as though it's more of a reactive versus a proactive approach. And then I know I've been looking at this Renwick Estate subdivision proposal, which was on the MEAR, or whatever the acronym is, I'm sorry, the MEAAR initial report. You have factored that in, that it's 160 houses with 5 additional high density housing proposals in there. But again, you know, we see that that's on paper, like we saw that this Kilworth proposal was on paper. We had that review in 2019. You saw that was happening. So you've now pushed the boundaries. You have the parents that have their kids enrolled in Delaware. And now we're talking about pulling them out and bringing them back in. This all sounds so backwards. And I'm sorry that I'm frustrated, but it seems as though all the writing is on the wall there, and we're not really considering all the families and how this is going to impact everyone.
Thank you for that. Just to clarify, so once the boundary review process is completed, our intention would be to apply to the Ministry of Education for an addition, and we typically get one opportunity to do that every year. Doesn't always happen that it's every year, but generally it's one time per year. But the ministry does want to see that the number of students in the area does warrant a new school. So this is part of the reason why we are undertaking this review. The other part of the rationale is that Parkview is the most proximal school for students in this part of Delaware Central's boundary. It certainly makes sense from a community building perspective to have students attend their most proximal school. But our plan is to submit this business case right away, so we're not anticipating that we'll have 10 portables on site, before that it's approved. Ultimately, it's still at the discretion of the Ministry of Education, and they would be reviewing that against other business cases, sort of on that one time per year time frame.
Okay, thanks. And we haven't at all considered bringing Valley View. I'm not sure what their capacity is into the boundary. This is all strictly Delaware Parkview. Has that been considered at all? I know that was part of the original attendance review back in 2019 with some of the rezoning and changing of the boundaries. I'm not familiar at all with Valley View or what their capacity is, if they're close or anything.
Thank you for that. So as part of the background work for this review, we did look at all schools in the area, which would include Valley View. Our best thinking at this time is to make this boundary change as shown in the presentation before you this evening. With that being said, we would certainly welcome any and all feedback through the subcommittee reports and would encourage you to discuss this with your school communities.
Thank you, Ben. Jeremy, go ahead with your question.
Hi, I'm a parent from Parkview. I guess I'm just more building on, Daria and Megan's questions there. The site in the new boundary area, that master site plan, I know phase 1 is, I think, pretty much done. It's about 226 homes, detached homes, and you have another 50 and 60 condominiums, and there's 5 phases for that. So you're looking at, 600 plus homes in that area, and then you have townhomes of Unity Square coming in. That's about 71 homes, and then I'm not sure what it's called, but the one by the water tower there, that's another 60-ish homes, I believe. Is it not possible, if we don't get ahead of this pretty quickly, that we'll be doubling the capacity of Parkview? Because those houses are obviously going to go straight to Parkview because they are down the street from it. But the development in question there is rather huge. Once it's done, it's probably 600, 700 plus homes.
Thanks for the question, Jeremy. I'll pass that over to Capital Planning.
Thank you, Jeremy. So we monitor all of the development applications that are received in Middlesex Center. So we've got a really good working relationship with the planning staff there. And I know Cassandra has factored in those developments into the enrollment projections. So certainly Parkview is going to grow, and we recognize that that growth cannot be sustained only in portables. Our solution here is to seek an addition from the Ministry of Education, and then longer term, as some of the other areas in Middlesex Center develop, we do want to see a new school in the community. So that this is something that's certainly on our radar.
Thanks, Ben. We have a couple of questions in terms of when could the expansion be predicted, and I feel that you've kind of touched on that in relationship to our application with the ministry. I have another question here. We have been hearing about new homes in the area were sold to families with the understanding they would go to Parkview. Just curious, who has a stake in this? Why are we changing it now? And I feel that you've perhaps answered that already in reference to the decision in 2019 versus the cap on enrollment that will be in effect in January. I don't know if there's any additional highlights you'd like to make about that. Okay, thank you. I'll give a few moments for any additional questions. Seeing none at this time, thank you for those for sharing some of your initial inquiries as it relates to this attendance area review. And as mentioned, this is exactly the type of dialogue and discourse and feedback that we'd like to see from your subcommittee reports. So we really encourage the voice of the communities with whom you represent. The next step in the attendance area review process is holding the school level subcommittee meetings, just as I had mentioned, for the purpose of gathering this feedback regarding this boundary change that is under consideration. The Thames Valley District School Board Administration team will be providing AARC members with this slide deck to include as part of their respective school level meetings, as well as template documents for meeting agendas, minutes, and a subcommittee report regarding the school community's input. Thank you for taking this time to join us this evening for this important initiative. Enjoy your evening. Thank you.